Just when you thought the milk couldn't get any worse. Yes, episode 4 of The Boys is here, and if you've ever wondered what it's like to make out with yourself, just remember... In this video, we're covering everything episode 4, the memes, the chocolate bars, and even the background actors.
Listen, if you're ever in the mood for another Almond Joy...
But before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe, or else. Welcome to the worst dating site ever. No, not Tinder. The Deep is holding interviews for his new wife. We'll see a couple of these women being interviewed throughout the episode as part of the Church of the Collective's plan to clean up the Deep's image and get him back into the 7. With 8 Train now out and Starlight wanting out too, it's looking more and more like the Deep has a chance of getting back. Back at the boys' hideout, everyone is reeling from the events of last episode. Stormfront's attack ended up killing 59 people, but the media has spinned it to make it seem like it was all Kenji's fault. Kimiko's soup terrorist brother who was radicalized by the Shining Light Liberation Army. And Frenchie, my dude, you don't go in for a kiss when your girl is mourning.
Denied.
Homelander is pissed Stormfront is getting all the attention from the press. He's obsessed with being loved, something he didn't get as a child growing up as a Vought science experiment. He especially craves the love of a strong, take-charge woman, which is why he gravitates toward Madeline Stillwell, who he killed at the end of season 1. Now, I gotta admit, at first I thought this was some sort of dream or hallucination, but Homelander has a soup named Doppelganger morph into Madeline so he can satiate his desire for motherly love and milk. Precious, precious milk. We last saw Doppelganger in season 1, where he was used by Madeline to frame Senator Calhoun. Grace and Butcher meet outside a vigil for the 59 killed in the Stormfront attack. Fun fact, these scenes were shot a minute away from my home, so I went out and snapped this picture of what the real buildings look like. Grace talks about how she's haunted by the victims of soups who just stare at her wanting her to do something. Helping Butcher is her way of seeking some sort of redemption. She gives him the location of his wife, Becca, who's currently locked away in a Vought compound with Homelander's son, Ryan. They also discuss a, quote, second-tier soup from the 70s called Liberty who may somehow be involved with Susan Raynor's exploding head. If you haven't checked out my episode 1 to 3 video, you'll want to check that out as I go over who this head-exploding soup could be. Homelander and Madeline relax to a romantic movie, Taxi Driver.
You talking to me?
And in the episode trivia it says that Homelander finds De Niro's character Travis Bickle a role model. And if you've seen Taxi Driver, that's saying something. I also couldn't help but feel the scene where Kimiko attempts to assassinate Stormfront is crazy similar to Travis Bickle's attempted assassination of Senator Palantine. In both cases, the assassinations never occur. Homelander is pissed. His identity has always centered around him being the face of the 7, but that's slowly being eroded. If that's going to change, he'll need to
tear out the weeds.
Butcher tasks Mother's Milk with going after Liberty while he goes after Becca. If they can get more info on this Liberty soup, maybe Grace can pull some strings and reunite him with his family. Homelander nearly kills Starlight after her hesitance to kill Hugh last episode. She ends up telling him the truth, that she loved Hugh but he broke her heart and now wants to blow his face off. Bonus points if you notice this takes place on the 69th floor.
Nice.
Black Noir gets more than 8 seconds of screen time using Annika to track down Butcher. She works in crime analytics, and you might remember her from episode 2 of season 1 being bullied by Homelander. We also learn a very important piece of information that Black Noir doesn't like Almond Joys, Jeffrey Dahmer's chocolate bar of choice. Starlight decides to come with Huey and Mother's Milk on their search for Liberty. She's still apprehensive about their decision last episode to release the story about Compound V.
We risked our lives just to make the world way worse.
She doesn't want to be around Homelander or the Vought Tower, so she comes along for the ride, which includes Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire from an album called, get this, Stormfront. A-Train finds out he's being replaced due to his heart condition, potentially being replaced by Shockwave as long as he's not promoting anti-toddler obesity. This is really setting him up to join Starlight and the boys who he previously tried to stop from exposing Vought. But now that Vought has turned against him, all bets are off. There's also a fun little jab at Apple Plus and Disney Plus when Homelander says A-Train will get his own show on Vought Plus. And we know we're in the South with an anti-abortion soup billboard and a Homelander Confederate flag cape. A drunk Frenchie opens up to Sherry about his love for Kimiko. Sherry's name literally means darling in French, and we first saw her in episode 2 of season 1. She says to Frenchie,
by saving her, you can make amends for all the people you hurt, for those children
that lamplighter burned.
Frenchie was a member of the original Boys under Grace Mallory. He was responsible for stopping Lamplighter, but not before Lamplighter burned alive a bunch of kids. This of course was all covered up, and Lamplighter would later retire from the Seven, making room for Starlight to join. We haven't seen him yet this season, but Lamplight will be portrayed by Shawn Ashmore, which is kind of interesting since in the X-Men films he plays Iceman. Starlight and Mother's Milk have their first bonding experience. Starlight was never allowed sweets as a kid due to her overbearing stage mom. We also learn about Mother's Milk's father, a lawyer who tried to bring down Vought and worked so relentlessly he died of what my guess is heart disease. It's never really mentioned, but I don't get the feeling there's anything too nefarious here. Butcher is able to secretly meet with his wife, where he learns she's been living on the compound since the birth of Homeland's son, Ryan. The only reason Homelander didn't kill Butcher at the end of season 1 was that she promised to kill herself in front of Ryan and say, "Your father did this to me," if Butcher was killed. We've seen how much Homelander yearns for the perfect son, but there's only so many times Becca can threaten him with that. Starlight and Huey get it on. There's been sexual tension building, but Starlight later tells Huey that their relationship can't continue.
We can't afford to feel good or to feel safe or to let our guard down.
Becca and Butcher also hook up and plan to escape, a plan that's short-lived when the very next day, Becca says she can't go through with it, exposing Butcher's feelings towards Ryan.
He's a fucking suit freak!
At the end of the day, Becca can't leave her son, especially when it means he'd be raised by Vought and turned into another Homelander.
And then Vought raises him without a mother, right? Then we have Homelander all over again, and there's two fucking assholes in this world.
She believes she's the only one preventing that from happening. Homelander outs Maeve on live television when he's confronted with #HeroesSoWhite. We already know what Homelander thinks about diversity. He knows about Maeve's relationship with Elena, a relationship which Maeve said last episode if Homelander found out, he'd kill her. But Homelander seems to be taking it really well.
Honestly, Maeve, I am really happy for you.
Or not. Something tells me this isn't the last Homelander will bring this up. He winds up watching a Stormfront rally, his blood boiling as she continues to get attention. She's using anger and emotion to get the people on her side. Remember,
emotion sells, anger sells.
The enemy here are the soup terrorists, but the rhetoric here of scapegoating a specific group of people is highly indicative of what the Nazis did to the Jews. In fact, there are several connections between Stormfront and the Nazis. Not only is she a raging racist, but the name Stormfront also happens to be the leading internet forum for white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and Holocaust deniers. We later learn that Stormfront is indeed the Soup Liberty who went mysteriously missing for 30 years, after being involved in a hate crime that was covered up by Vought. This could mean she's the daughter or related to Frederick Vought, the Nazi who experimented on Jews at the Dachau concentration camp and who would later become the founder of Vought Industries. Stormfront also doesn't age, just like in the comics, which Starlight suggests may be a result of continued use of Compound V, something she'd have access to if she were connected with Vought. Homelander is pissed at the amount of memes made about him. I've left a link where you can find all of them in the description. Here's one of my favorites. This spurs Homelander to finally confront Stormfront, and she knows exactly how to push his buttons.
This constant need to be loved by everyone is kind of pathetic.
This almost gets her lasered in too, but she says she knows what his problem is. He hasn't changed with the times like she has, a nod that she's Liberty. The United States isn't some homogenous group that once could be easily manipulated. Nowadays, not everyone is going to love you.
You don't need 50 million people to love you. You need 5 million people fucking pissed.
And really, she's talking about American politics today, where it seems the loudest voices in the room, the ones who cater to fear and emotion, are the ones who get the most headlines. She has 5 interns who she pays in Arby's cards to make memes, which does more damage than Homelander's multi-million-dollar marketing team. And I'm just gonna come right out and say it, but I think Homelander and Stormfront are gonna get it on. I mean, he does have a thing for older women, and she's probably like 70 plus now. And here is where Homelander's character arc really changes. At the beginning of the episode, he lamented how no one loves him anymore, and he wants to get that feeling back. If he can put the Seven back in line and become the face of it again, everything should be fine. But when he finds out that isn't going to be possible, his mindset completely changes. Instead of wanting to be loved by everyone, he says,
I don't need everyone to love me. I don't need anyone.
This final scene where Doppelganger morphs into Homelander was one of my favorites in the episode. It allows Homelander to express his own feelings to his literal self.
You're pathetic.
When he says that, he's not saying it to Doppelganger, it's what he feels about himself. He's pathetic. Whereas in the beginning he needed to feel that love from Madeline Stillwell, he now needs no one.
I don't need anyone but myself.
If you thought Homelander was a piece of shit before, how about Homelander who doesn't care about anyone or anything? He's not gonna give a fuck about anything anymore. The only thing that might possibly bring him back to some degree of sanity is his son, but even that is up in the air. That's it for this episode breakdown of The Boys. Make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and leave a comment below on what you thought about this week's ep. For more bad takes, you can follow me on Twitter @ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.